Okay, we are live. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine Sunday show. This is July the 13th, 2014. And everyone from now on, the guy on your screen now, you'll have to refer to him as Sir from now on.
Yeah, I was knighted, okay.
All kidding aside, everybody got the news today that Joe's anthology that he edited, one of several, the Grim Scribe's Puppets, Thomas Ligotti anthology, won a Shirley Jackson Award for the best anthology. So, congratulations, Joe.
I think we need to, the people need to know what this award means, because Shirley Jackson is a famous author who died in 1965. She wrote, you probably read it in English class, a story called The Lottery.
Right.
You know that story where they pick one person to be stoned to death each year by lottery?
Yeah, great story.
And she wrote, did she write The Haunting of Hill House?
Yeah, she wrote The Haunting of Hill House.
Yes.
At
And
any
we
rate,
used to live in the castle.
her estate wanted to encourage authors and editors in the field of supernatural and dark fiction, so they sponsored these awards. So these are just kind of, you can think of them as like, they're not like the same as like, say, with the Nebula where you get the science fiction writers from America. It's more like just a outstanding achievement in the field of weird and dark fiction and horror.
Right.
And with the cash prizes, Joe said he was taking us out to dinner at Necronomicon.
Yeah, the cash prize. Actually, if you want to know something weird, I have always loved rocks. Okay?
That is weird.
I have rocks all over.
I can't wait for the segue on this.
Okay? And, you know, I got a bunch of rocks. You know, this one's from Lena Griffin's pond. You know? This one's petrified out of the Sahara. Okay?
That looks
Over there is one from Chambers' grave.
Do you have a Shirley Jackson rock?
Well, all the nominees get a rock that says 2013 Shirley Jackson Award.
I'm so sorry, I did not know that.
I cannot wait to get my hands on this rock.
Now, is it like from the foundation of the Hill House or something, or?
I thought it might tie into the lottery.
I don't know. Maybe it does. I don't know. All I know is all the nominees have always gotten a rock. You know,
I see a future horror story where that Shirley Jackson Award rock is a murder weapon. So
I am
stone somebody.
I'm thrilled and delighted to actually win the award. I mean, the other nominees in the category were jaw-dropping. You know, I, in all honesty, did not expect to win. In fact, now that I won, I feel bad because they sent a thing saying if you're not in attendance, you know, send us something to read in case you do win. So I wrote up this little acceptance speech. I didn't think I was going to win. And it won, so that means that it got read in front of Ellen Datlow and
you beat Ellen Datlow out. You beat her.
I beat Ellen. Well, you know what?
Yeah,
Ellen's already got like 52, and she's going to win another 106.
Yeah.
So Ellen probably said, you know, I pitied a fool, and because she's nice. So, you know.
The other books that were nominated, I've got them in front of me. I'll have to check these out. The Book of the Dead, edited by Jared Shuren. End of the Road, Jonathan Oliver. Queen Victoria's Book of Spells, an anthology of Gaslamp fantasy, edited by Ellen Datlow, which everyone's heard me say a million times. If you see the words edited by Ellen Datlow on the cover of a book, Just buy the book. Don't even look at the
Yeah,
title.
when it says Ellen Datlow, what it really means is the best.
Mm-hmm. And where thy dark
It is
eye
not as good as
glances.
the Fulver.
Okay, the last one was Where Thy Dark Eye Glances, querying Edgar Allan
Edgar
Poe,
Allan
edited by
Poe,
Steve
yeah.
Byrne. Well, that's a title. I wonder what that's about.
But the thing is if you go surfing around the net and look at reviews of these other books in this category, these are great books.
That is not what you told me privately. You said you were a shoo-in because
Oh
the other
yeah,
books.
yeah, right. Yeah, you know me.
No, Joe is not that way.
Davis, you better be in really good shape when next we meet because I'm gonna kick your ass.
Joe, for those that
No,
don't know that are watching,
in all seriousness,
yeah.
if you go to different blogs and search for these books and read the reviews, I read all of those reviews and stuff. I went, yeah, right. I am not winning this.
For those who are watching that don't know, Joe's a very, very good friend of mine, and when he found out he was nominated for the Stoker, Grimmscribe's Puppets, he did not expect to win. He was just tickled to death to be nominated.
I'm tickled that I was nominated. Yeah, I thought that was a great compliment. Um, I'm also really excited for the contributors because, yes, it was my idea to do the tribute anthology to Tom Ligotti, and yes, I invited the writers, and yes, I edited the work, and yes, I picked who was in and who wasn't. So yeah, I steered the ship. But all the contributors, Gemma Files, Robin Spriggs, and Simon Stranzis, and Ali Bird, and Langan, they're the ones who rowed the boat.
Well, and as a matter of fact, one of the short stories, Furnace by Olivia Llewellyn, was also nominated for
Yes, it
Shirley
was,
Jackson
and I was
fiction.
really disappointed that didn't win.
Yeah, I'm disappointed.
It's the first story in Grimmscribe's Puppets, and there's probably a reason that I won't explain why it's the first story in the Grimmscribe's Puppets. Olivia Llewellyn is one of the greatest writers we have. I believe this was her second Shirley Jackson Award nomination. I can tell you it certainly won't be her last, and I expect she will ultimately win a whole pile of Shirley Jackson Awards.
And by the way, Joe,
huh?
I don't know if you know this, but Olivia said she was going to be a regular contributor on the Sunday panel, and the only reason she's not here today is because I believe she's at ReaderCon, but she'll be here next Sunday. So she's going to be a regular.
I know she's at ReaderCon. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's going to be a regular here, so I'm very excited.
Which is great. She's not only is a brilliant writer, but she's knowledgeable as hell. She's funny, and let's face it, we need something other than testosterone in this damn thing.
Well, won't even go.
So,
Joe, why don't you tell the audience? We have a lot of people watching. For those that don't know, just briefly, who's Thomas Ligotti, and why a tribute anthology, and what kind of fiction is this? I mean, what describing Thomas Ligotti to someone that's never heard of him, he can be very difficult to describe.
True.
His work.
Tom's work is atmospheric, philosophical. There are strains, certainly of Poe, of Lovecraft. He's, as a wordsmith, he is among our finest. He's won multiple awards. He is a living master of horror and weird fiction. My appreciation of Tom starts with the paperback of Songs of a Dead Dreamer, and the first story in that was called The Frolic, which is Tom's serial killer story. I should have pulled that out. And the closing paragraph, which I've actually read on a couple of the chats, is, I think, among the finest paragraphs I've ever read, and that's what originally hooked me on Ligotti. Just the quality of the prose, you know, in the strange galactic sewers, whatever. You know, my little deer and I, and that's terrible. I'm not even remembering half of the sentence. He's just brilliant. His work is dark. His worldview is nihilistic as anything. You know, grim. Yeah, his worldview is the penultimate definition of grim.
You guys, I'm trying to remember. He wrote. It was in the introduction to a book of his or a weird fiction book. I'm not sure where. You guys know how my memory is, but you guys probably know this, where he basically describes weird fiction and what are the hallmarks of weird fiction. And one of the things he said, which I'm going to paraphrase terribly, I wish I could. I've got it in my Kindle, but I don't know where, which book. Is the protagonist is doomed, basically, and you know, he said it obviously much better, and it was so good. I wish I could remember where it is.
Well, I'm looking up this paragraph because I can never read it enough. I can never quote it enough. We leave this behind in your capable hands, for in the black foaming gutters and back alleys of paradise, in the dank windowless gloom of some galactic cellar, in the hollow pearly whirls found in sewer-like seas, in starless cities of insanity, and in their slums, my awestruck little deer and I have gone frolic. I mean, you know, windowless gloom of some galactic cellar, in the hollow pearly worlds found in sewer-like seas, in starless cities of insanity, and their slums. Jesus, I couldn't write that on my best day. It's just amazing material. And, you know, after all this time, after, you know, the number of stories, you know, the Mystics of Muhlenberg, the Library of Byzantium, Conversations in a Dead Language, Gas Station Carnivals, The Bungalow House, what else? The Troubles of Dr. Voss, Dr. Vogt and Mr. Veach, The Sect of the Idiot. I mean, The Sect of the Idiots and The Greater Festival of Masks, Verastian. How many best of weird fiction lists are those stories on? A whole bunch. The Last Feast of Horror.
Freeze up.
And
Yeah, I didn't know if that was me or Joe. There he is.
oh, and that's
Go ahead,
just
Joe. Repeat
that's
that.
just part of the Nightmare Factory. You know, you can open any of Ligotti's books to virtually any page and start reading, and you're going to be knocked out by the prose. It's just,
you know, and no, it's no wonder too that Livia was nominated for her story in that book. I remember you sent me an advanced review copy of Grimscribe's Puppet, so I started reading from the beginning because somebody told me that I should do that. And right away I thought, you know, Ligotti could have written Furnace. You know, it sounds just like him, you know.
Yeah, but it's not pastiche, you know.
No, no, and I don't mean to imply that, but it was the feel. She nailed it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said a couple of minutes ago, she's she's right at the top of our best writers. Her collection a couple of years back, Engines of Desire. I mean, I still post about it periodically on Facebook and stuff. It's that damn good, you know. Um, yeah,
So,
just amazing. So with the Legati, you
mhm.
asked where the idea for Grimscribes came from. Is Tom put out a philosophical work called The Conspiracy Against the Human Race,
Yeah.
which is on Hippocampus, which is my publisher. So Derek sent me a copy. He's like, I know how much you love Tom, and I know you're going to want this, so here you go. I read it and was floored. Um, and I was also very affected by it. I mean, we
You can't
all
leave that
know
book and
the
not be.
yeah. Well, we all know the transformative power of the written word. And as I was nearing the end of uh, the conspiracy against the human race, I started to think of it almost as the King in Yellow. That the power of this work was so powerful it could alter you in a grim way, you know. And I got an idea for a story about somebody who got a hold of a copy of the Conspiracy Against the Human Race
Mhm.
and read it, and it drove this person to madness and so on. So I asked Tom, I told Tom what my idea for the story was, and I wanted to quote from the Conspiracy Against the Human Race extensively in the story, and he kindly gave me his permission, and I wrote 11,000-word novella called "And This Is Where I Go Down in the Darkness," um, and when I was done, of course, I had to let Tom see it, and he really loved it and thought it was a great tribute. And once he told me he loved it and thought it was a great tribute, I started to wonder what other people, because I mean, on Facebook, I'm interacting with, Simon Stranzis and a lot of other writers who I adore and I'm in awe of, and they make posts. And I, would see a name, and it's like, oh, I wonder if he wrote his Legati story, what that would be. And one thing led to another. So I asked Tom if it was okay to do a tribute anthology.
You know,
He said,
Conspiracy
yeah.
Against the Human Race. What I really like your analogy to the King in Yellow play, because all kidding aside, that is a Conspiracy Against the Human Race is a very disturbing piece of work, and for those who don't know, that's a non-fiction book by Thomas Legati, which, boy, I don't even know if I could give that a good description for what that book's about.
Yeah, it's like his philosophical treatise,
I'd say he wrote it as background material for True Detective.
Well, they certainly borrowed enough of it, didn't they?
But you notice at the beginning there, I forget the writer's name. He didn't want to. It seemed like he didn't want to admit that he borrowed from Conspiracy Against the Human Race.
In fact,
I don't know. It was so obvious. Okay, there's one thing in True Detective, and this is not a spoiler even for those who haven't seen it yet. In the third or fourth episode, I don't know what, the detectives go to this tent revival thing, and there's a preacher. Well, on the HBO website, you could, and in the course of this episode, you get bits and pieces of a sermon of his. And it's certainly a nod to Ligotti. There's a minor nod to Lovecraft. But you can go to the HBO website, and I assume that this thing is also part of the new box set.
Yes,
but you can see the whole 6-minute sermon, uninterrupted. It doesn't cut away and show the cops or anything. You just see the preacher doing his sermon. And you know, you want to reference the conspiracy of the against the human race? Boy, that's in there.
But even a couple episodes before that, I remember
with McConaughey,
detectives talking to Star about stuff, and I thought right away, conspiracy against the human race. Were you going to say something, Rick?
Yeah, I was going to say that on the DVD, which has all the features that are, or has all the extras that are on the website, and a couple of ones that aren't. He only really, in all the commentary, he only really mentions Nietzsche. You don't get Ligotti, you don't get any reference to Chambers, you don't get all the stuff we've been discussing.
Right, yeah, well, you know, I mean, Chambers, naturally, for Karl Edgar Wagner, for Styx, Ligotti, absolutely. Laird Barron. In one of the episodes, and I've got to see it again, but I could swear there's some talk about something from Alaska.
Well, I don't doubt it, because the author, what's his name? He knows it.
We know that this guy, Nick, whatever his last name is a huge Laird Barron fan.
Right.
And whatever that little reference to Alaska is absolutely Laird Barron.
Well, see, I thought that was just that one of the detectives, Cole, had gone up to Alaska.
Right, but just how it's put and what he did there, just to me, it's the guy tipping his hat to Laird. We you know,
which by the way,
there were all kinds of homages there to various forms of weird fiction. So.
Speaking of True Detective, for everybody watching, I would like to do in the near future a show on True Detective and talk about it with spoilers. So if you have not seen True Detective, you know, watch the show so you can talk to us about it when that time comes. I don't know, maybe in 3 or 4 weeks.
Or ignore the show until you get to see it. You know, so like I was saying, I started to wonder, you know, what would Simon Stranzis write? You know, what would Jeff Thomas write? A lot of these guys I know and whose work I love. And Tom, like I said, Tom Ligotti kindly gave me his permission to do the tribute. Some of the people I asked some people, they were all interested. Then I went in search of a publisher, which wasn't an easy hill to climb. I mean, everybody liked the idea, but nobody thought it would sell. So, and then I came across Miskatonic, River Press, and Scott Anilowski loved the idea and talked to Tom Lynch about it, and they green-lighted it. And I sent out the invites, and we were rolling. And it was wonderful, just thrilling. You know, you open your email, and here's Robin Spriggs' submission. And here's Michael Sisko's story. And you know they were written as tributes to Tom, but they would have never been written had you not asked. And you're reading it before anybody else in the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the other nice thing about being an editor, when you get to read those special stories before anyone else does.
Yeah. You know, Livia's story. I read Livia's story, and, you know, I was just like, wow. And I got up, and I went out and made it a cup of tea, and I rolled a couple of cigarettes, and I came back here, and I read it again. Because it was like one of those things where you're kind of pinching yourself. Please, please let me have really read that. Don't let me have imagined that. You know, I mean, the damn thing was that good. I read it 3 times in a row, and just couldn't believe it. It was like listening to your lotto numbers getting picked or something. So that was really wonderful to just story after story when they were coming in. You know, I wish Joel Lane was still with us. His story is just wonderful. And I still remember reading that the first time. You know, there's just so many things. Waiting forever for John Langan. I'm almost there. I'm getting there.
Ellen Datlow told me the same thing about John.
I would wait for hell to freeze over for Langan because he's so worth it.
Well, wait a minute. I'm waiting on one from John right now, actually.
Yeah. Well, put your hand on your ass because it's going to take a while. He's going to give you a piece of gold. It just,
I have no doubt.
You know, you get these emails. I'm still working on it. Next week. Okay, great, super. And you get all excited and you go, okay. You know, so like I said, and the people who agreed, you know, who said yes when I invited them. Gemma Files is one of my favorite writers. She's vastly underread. She should be top 5 on any weird fiction lover's reading list. She's just amazing, and I don't think there's anything she can't do. You know, so when someone with that kind of talent says, yes, I'd love to, and then, you, like I said, you know, you open this email and you're like, wow. Once the thing got rolling, there was only one hard part to the book. And that was when I finally had all the submissions, and I was in the living room with this pile like this thick, and it's like, okay, this one goes first, this one goes last, this one's somewhere right about dead middle, and then starting to mix and match to try to get the table of contents in order. You know, I didn't want 2 novellas together, and, you know, I didn't want Cisco and Spriggs because they were sort of experimental. I didn't want them too close to each other. So you're trying to figure out what the flow is. And then you're worried about all the readers who don't read in order anyway. And I can understand why readers don't read an anthology in order. You know, you look through and there's the Gemma Files story, and let's say it's number 7, and you're a big fan. Yeah, you want to read that one first. But trust me, if it's, I don't know, if it's at Yahoo Joe Pulver or if it's Ellen Datlow, editors struggle to structure anthologies. You know, we really do spend a ton of time trying to figure out what order these should be read in.
John mentioned a couple of people, then we'll get back to Grimscribe's Puppets, but I just want to mention Whom the Gods Would Destroy was nominated for Shirley Jackson Novella Award. Didn't win, but it was nominated, which is great. We had Brian Hodge on the show talking about that book. That's a great little novella. And so was Ramsey's The Last Revelation of Glaaki, another great Lovecraftian book. So I find it interesting that in the novellas there's at least 2 Lovecraftian themed books. I like to see that.
Yeah, but this is the Shirley Jackson Awards are interested in merit, in quality. They are not interested in. They don't care if it's Lovecraft or zombies.
Right.
They are only concerned with the quality of the work.
Also want to say congratulations to Nathan Ballingrud.
Yeah, North American Lake
Right.
Monsters is brilliant, utterly brilliant. Nicole Cushing, she was in Grim Scribes. Her story that was nominated isn't the one from Grim Scribes, but she was also in
In
Grim
the novella,
Scribes.
Children of No One.
Yeah. Um, there were a lot of things nominated that, I mean, there are things nominated I didn't get to read, so I can't speak to them. But boy, a lot of great stuff on that list based on what I got to see. And
Another
it's the same
interesting thing
way.
in the novella department.
If you go back and look at prior year Shirley Jackson awards, you know, Cisco, Laird, Elizabeth Hand, S.P. Muskowski, Livia, Caitlin Kiernan. It's just these are all those writers we all are in awe of, that we all adore, that we all think walk on water. You know, this is like the Green Jacket at the Masters.
PS Publishing had a good year too. 3 of their novellas were nominated.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Joe,
Yeah, right.
You mentioned your own short story, which you didn't include in Grim Scribes Puppets. Where can we?
Okay, all right. When I was originally talking to Tom Ligotti, and he gave me permission, he said I told him it'll be all new work, and he said, look, you're the editor, you can do whatever you want, but he goes, I always liked Edie Angerberger's tributes to me. He goes, and I know you were a fan. Is there any way you'd see your way clear to include something of hers? And I told him that I would consider it. And ultimately I used her Blue Star, which is my favorite of her tributes to him. And Tom had said that my novella, and this is where I go down into darkness, should be in the book. But I don't like editors being in their own books. I don't think that's good editing. I don't think that's good etiquette. And who the hell's going to vet me?
Yeah, you know, I've noticed a trend lately in the last several months, 6 months or so. Some of the Lovecraftian books I've seen, anthologies that I see over and over. I see the editors have
right.
one or two stories of them.
I can't stand that. I don't think it's right. I think the exception to that is the Vandermeers, because the Vandermeer is putting together an anthology. She is not going to put a Jeff Vandermeer story in it just because she's in love with him. You know what I mean? I think they're the exception. But other than that, I couldn't be more strongly against that. I mean, I had a story in a season in Carcosa because to make the deal with Miskatonic, they said, look, you are the King in Yellow. If you're not in the book, we won't greenlight it. So, and that's the other reason why my story in a season in Carcosa is less than 2,000 words, because I didn't want to take up any space. So when it came
where will your Ligotti tribute be published?
It was already published. Well, okay, so Tom said that he wanted me to put in, and this is where I go down into darkness, in Grim Scribes. And I told him I don't like that, but I think about it. Well, I was putting together the collection of Portraits of Ruin, my own Hippocampus collection, and I needed another story. So, in my evil little skull, I thought, if I take my Ligotti tribute and stick it in Portraits, I won't be able to use it for Grim Scribes, which solves my problems for the story I needed for Portraits of Ruin, and it got me out of being in Grimscribes because
So,
I didn't want to take up the space, and I'm
so
opposed.
that Thomas Ligotti tribute you're talking about, that's in Portraits of Ruin?
Yeah, it's
right?
the very last story in Portraits of Ruin.
Okay.
And so, like I said, that killed two birds with one stone. And trust me, I will never again be in another anthology that I'm editing, unless they stick the gun to my head and say, if you don't write something for it, you're not in it. And Tom Lynch will tell you that I argued and argued against being in a season in Carcosa, and they said, you don't have to be in Grimscribes, we'll let you off the hook there, but you have to be in a season in Carcosa. So...
Yeah, and I can see why he did that. I mean, The King in Yellow is, I mean, you're...
I know, but I don't want to... When I'm writing a story for a collection, that's one thing. But in a collection I'm editing, I don't want to take up any space. You know, that's... I'm the editor. I have a completely different brain when I'm editing than I do when I'm writing. You know? And like I said, how could I possibly vet myself?
Well, that's what I was about to say. I see these over and over lately, and I'm wondering who read this story objectively and said, if it's crap, it's not going in. You know.
Yeah. I mean, okay, in the Grimscribes Puppets, I'm not picking on these guys. I'll just say this: it's like I asked Mike Griffin to change some things. I asked Joel Lane. For crying out loud, to change something. Okay? One of my favorite writers. So how could I possibly ask these guys as an editor to re-examine something or make a change or at least think about my suggestion, you know, changing the material? If I'm in the damn book as a writer, either you're the editor or you're a contributor. You know,
one of the things I worry about is it's sort of a back doorway to get published.
Okay, a lot of people do that. It's like, you know, I'll pick on the mythos for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to be a mythos writer and I need publishing credits, so I'll do an anthology and I'm in it, and I edited it. Oh, I got 2 mythos credits, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
whether it's
not like I read those stories and stuff.
Or whether it's the Grimscribes Puppets, or whether it's an Ellen Datlow book, or a whole lot of other things we could name. You have these editors. We may make wrong decisions. You may encounter a story in something I edit, or in Lovecraft eZine that you don't like. But the quality's there. The vision is there. You can tell, Mike, with you can tell the time and effort you're putting in month after month after month. Even if I don't like that story in the April issue, I can still see what's going on. Because nobody's going to like everything. That's not possible. I mean,
well, especially this year's April issue. I mean, my God.
Well, I don't remember. I don't even know what 1 April was, bro. But you know what I mean.
That was you.
Oh, it was it? Oh,
that's why.
Thanks a lot. That was a brilliant issue. There was nothing in there that wasn't A+.
Nothing. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. That had Mike Griffin in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's. I mean, yes. But.
Yeah, and you know, I very rarely
see these books.
There are like these books. It's a trend that disturbs me, you know.
You know, the thing is I read my whole life. You know, I worked in a warehouse. It was Friday night. I got my paycheck. I went to the bank, I cashed my paycheck, I got on the bus, I stopped at the bookstore on the way home, and, you know, I worked in a warehouse. I spent my hard-earned money to read a book. So, whether, so, so what I'm trying to do, what Ellen Datlow tries to do, what Mike Davis tries to do, what a whole ton of editors I can name try to do is you go out into the world and you trade your time for money, and you're about to buy this product, you know, this book, and it's up to the editor to do the best job they possibly can do to assemble the best work they can get their hands on to give you for that money you're going to trade.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Rick, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that the trend of an editor including his own work in an anthology, it goes back to at least the 70s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Lynn Carter
Probably the
used to do it all the time. It's not that it hasn't been done.
Right.
And it's also been done well. There have been editors that have been in their own books that's a hell of a story. But in general, it's wrong. And I think the majority of the time, 2/3 of the time, 3/4 of the time, that material is not on par with the other material. And, you know, there are writers out there who are so talented I don't have words. Caitlin Kiernan. I'm sure Caitlin Kiernan could fairly vet her own work. I also know for a fact Joe Pulver cannot properly vet his own work. He doesn't even know what the hell they are when he's done writing them. You know, I get to the end, it's done. I don't even know if they're any good or not. And matter of fact, normally when I like them, that's when other people don't like them. And the ones that I don't like, other people go, wow, that's really incredible. And it's like, it is? What, huh? So, it's just a pet peeve of mine, you know. We need to stop seeing that. I mean,
yeah.
Look at Mike. You don't do it. How many issues of Lovecraft eZines there have been in the last few years?
31, right?
31, and I've published one story of mine. And what I did then was, and I'll probably never do it again, but of course that's not an anthology, it's a magazine. But what I did was I sent it anonymously to another editor, writer that I know, and told him I needed a second opinion on this story, and I had a fake name on it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my point here is you could have published 25 or 30 stories if you wanted, but you didn't. And you didn't for the same reason I don't like publishing my own. You know? So.
Well, I feel like if I did that, I would lose some credibility, you know.
Yeah, you do.
The magazine would look that much less professional.
I absolutely agree.
So.
You know?
And I don't expect everybody out there watching this now or later to agree, but that's the way I feel about it.
Well, no, there's going to be naysayers. There's going to be people who disagree. You know, people that disagree, that's part and parcel nowadays of social media outlets, isn't it?
I mean, let's face it, if they disagree with us, they're wrong. I mean, but...
You know, no matter what you say, the sun comes up in the east. No, it doesn't. No, well, I looked out the other window, and it did not come up in the east. You know, hell, Jesus could come down and tell one of these people something. Oh, no, I'm a Buddhist, you know, or whatever. I don't know.
Well, I saw a photo of Steven Spielberg next to a dinosaur, and I just barely
thing.
It basically was a joke that he killed this dinosaur, and there was all kinds of comments from internet users about what a terrible person he was, and going, yeah, the last dinosaur died 65 million years ago, people.
Come on, Mike. Chickens are dinosaurs.
What's that?
The birds are dinosaurs.
One of these newspapers, The Guardian or somebody like that, had an article on this, and they posted, some comments. And, it's like, these things died 65 million years ago, blah, 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 blah. No, they didn't. You're lying. I looked in the Bible, and blah. Here's people, saying, hey, look, this is a joke. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Look at that picture. You can see him right there, and that's dead. That's a real dinosaur, and he killed it. No, that's photoshopped or blah, blah, blah. But you can't convince some of these people. They're right. You're an idiot. End of story.
So Grimscar's Puppets, what I'd like to do now is ask you guys, all three of you, this was obviously a tribute anthology, as we said, to Thomas Ligotti, and it's what Joe's been talking about. Favorite Ligotti stories or books, or any comments that you'd like to throw in here about his work?
I'd like to make a comment. It gets to be a difficult thing. It's like, it's one thing people write Lovecraft tribute anthologies, and, well, he's deceased. His output has stopped. Or, you do a Conan knockoff. Well, the author isn't there still writing. I understand Ligotti is not very prolific, but here we are writing him. I just had a little misgivings about that, the same way I did about when I heard that they're going to come up with the Children of Old Leech. And I thought, well, you know what? Mr. Barron is still very actively writing, and we're going to go play with his sandbox. Is this technically a form of, quote, fan fiction? I don't know. The fact is, let me just tell you, about halfway through Children of Old Leech. It's bloody brilliant.
Yeah, I've finished it.
It's a really good.
Excellent story by Joe in there.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. All right, I'm not disagreeing with you, Matt. But first off is 95% all fan fiction's crap.
That's true.
But not all fan fiction is crap.
Well, I don't even know if this would qualify as fan fiction, because that's more like
I don't know that it does qualify as fan fiction, but if somebody cared to call it fan fiction, not all fan fiction is bad. We use the word pastiche.
Well, this question came up on a panel I was on at the Necronomicon, and what I said was this. I said I'm working on a Batman mythos story, just for fun. Okay, it's never going to be published. No one's ever going to see it. That's fan fiction. That's something I'm writing for the fun of it. That's fan fiction because I'm using somebody else's universe. Now, and it's a very valid question.
Wrote a Batman novel.
If you're using the themes of another author, I don't see that as fan fiction. Even if that author is alive. And like Children of Old Leech, I mean, were they really stories set in Laird's universe, or were they just basically tribute stories to his work?
I think they fell in about half and half.
Yeah, a little of both to me.
I mean, Cody's was definitely set in Laird's universe.
Well, and I'm not saying that is fan fiction. I don't believe any of it's fan fiction, but it's a valid question.
But, all right, as far as Ligotti and influence, Ligotti's been around since the mid-'80s, and there's absolutely no doubt he has, even though he's still working, not as prolifically as we'd all like, there is no doubt that he has been influential and will continue to be influential. He's someone who I admire and respect. I adore his work.
I think it's like in the old days, like a composer would take someone else's theme and they just create a whole new work out of it. You know, this
Right.
is like Bach took stuff from Vivaldi. You know,
Sure. It's happened forever in jazz. How many people have played their own version of The Shadow of Your Smile or whatever?
right. So, and then
These
when
are
Lovecraft was
tributes.
writing, people were taking his creations and building in the same sandbox. You know what I mean? I just tell you, I only had this little bit of personal misgiving thinking about it, but it's really a matter of the product. Is the product a good read? And if it's a good read, well, hey, it was well worth it.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think, you know, are the stories worthy? Is the material worthy? Legati's certainly influential. I felt as the editor that the stories included in Grim Scribes were worthy, you know. Um, Somewhere on the internet I saw a post, you know, that said there were too many puppet stories in the book. Well, you know, maybe somebody should have counted them while they were going through, because I don't think there were too many puppet stories.
You know, I'm getting to the point where seeing comments like that about Lovecraft eZine. I used to weigh them in my mind and think, okay, do I, you know, is there some validity to that? And more I'm realizing that, you know, if it's someone I know, someone I respect, I'm going to listen to it. But there's a lot of people out there that just like to sound off their opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
You know,
Matt told me a few months ago that I needed to get a thicker skin, you know, and he was right. You know, that's one of those
some
like
writers and editors. Yeah, well, some writers and editors get a quick skin pretty easy. Some of us, it takes quite a long time to develop any kind of skin, body armor, you know, because we care so much.
Yeah.
You know,
Like I said,
my wife gets into a little incident with someone, and they may say something, and she'll brood on it. And, you know, it's just a personality type, because my personality type is, fuck it, you know, move on, you know.
Well, artists are just naturally kind of sensitive to begin with, you know.
Yeah.
Writers, editors, artists, you know, those
big
type
crybabies.
Creative types, let's say that.
Yeah.
Rick,
Big crybabies.
Rick, Matt, and Joe. What about favorite Legati stories or books?
Well,
Okay.
before, when I was ticking them off, Last Feast of Harlequin is probably on most critics' best Legati story list. The Greater Festival of Mask and the Sect of the Idiot are incredible. I love Nethyscurial. I love The Shadow at the Bottom of the World. Lot of Legati fans like that, but a bunch don't. That seems to be one of those, you love it to death or you hate it. Gas Station Carnivals. The Red Tower. I think, boy, you know, Bungalow House, Gas Station Carnivals, Red Tower, Last Feast of Harlequin, Sect of the Idiot, Greater Festival of Masks. If I could only save a handful of Legati stories for humanity, those would be it.
I just found the book that I was trying to remember at the beginning of the show. I was talking about Noctuary, Thomas Legati. At the beginning, let's see. Pretty sure this was written by Notes in the Night in the Dark. A note on the appreciation of weird fiction. For example, I'm skipping ahead a little bit. For example, on display there is a well-known story that goes as follows. A man awakes in the darkness and reaches over for his eyeglasses on the nightstand. The eyeglasses are placed in his hand. This is the bare bones of so many tales that have caused readers to shiver with the sense of the weird. You might simply accept this shiver and pass on to other things. You might even try to suppress the full power of this episode if it be too vividly conceived. On the other hand, it is possible and considered by some to be desirable to achieve the optimal receptiveness to the incident in question, to open up to it in order to allow its complete effect and suggestiveness to take hold. This whole intro, I guess, to that book is really, really good when we're talking about weird fiction. So I just want to throw that out there.
Just one thing I want to mention. Joe included probably almost all my favorite stories, but I know there's one story we disagree on, which is My Work Is Not Yet Done, which is one of my favorite Ligotti stories.
And I know a ton of people who rate that way up the food chain. I don't know, maybe because I spent time working in that environment is why I don't like it. It also might be that came out at a time where I wanted something different from Tom. You know, if I'm being fair, it wasn't what I was hoping for. And like I said, because I'd spent time working in, in an environment like that, maybe it was too close to home.
I'd like to read the quote that I was trying to paraphrase badly. I finally found it here while you were talking, Joe. To perceive, even if mistakenly, that all one's steps have been heading toward a prearranged appointment, to realize one has come face to face with what seems to have been waiting all along. This is the necessary framework, the supporting skeleton of the weird. I really like that. He's right. I see that time and time again in weird fiction.
I mean, and this is, his collected stories, all the volumes of his work that I have. This is why I wanted to pay tribute to him. This is somebody who I just have the most respect for. I'm utterly in awe of him as a writer. Time and time again, here I am writing. And then you read this Tom Ligotti story, and you go, why the hell am I bothering? What I ought to be doing is telling everybody in the world, you need to read Tom Ligotti and not bothering them with something of mine. Of course.
By the way, for those that are watching that are like, oh, God, I got to read Thomas Ligotti right away, if you have a Kindle, there are 4 or 5 of his books available on Kindle. So you can start reading today if you want. So.
Yeah. My views are like somewhere in between. I personally did not very much like Shadow at the Bottom of the World, but I think The Last Feast of Harlequin would make my desert island mythos list. It is
there you go.
So beautifully written. There's so much about it that is so good. The fact that it's happening during a festival and everyone's wearing masks and they're up. I can imagine they're dressed like clowns, or it's like a carnival, and I like that motif. I just thought it's a brilliant story. It is really, it's superb.
And that is in his Grimscribe collection, for everybody watching, and that's also available on Kindle as well.
It's Cthulhu 2000.
And
it's in a couple of places.
Nightmare Factory, and I think it's in Teatro Grotesco.
It's in Grimscribes, is what it is. In Grimscribe.
Right, yeah, Grimscribes is where it originally appeared.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. But it's in like 3 other collections as well.
Okay.
Even though that story ties into the Yellow Sign and the festival, if you knew nothing about the Cthulhu mythos, you can totally enjoy that story.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would say it's like Lovecraftian without being mythos. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't need
It's
to
my
know
favorite type of
anything.
Lovecraftian story. Yeah.
You don't need to know anything about anything to love that story. It's perfectly standalone. If you're into a lot of other things, yeah, you can find other things in there, but you don't need anything else. You know, but all of Tom's books. One of my, I don't know if we can see this or not.
Oh yeah, I've got that.
I love this stuff. You know, just the insufferable salvation of Lawrence Talbot, the Wolfman. The intolerable lesson of the Phantom of the Opera. You know.
Doesn't he have a Call of Cthulhu story tie-in in that one?
Geez, I don't remember.
So he did one about the narrator in Call of Cthulhu. Thurston or whatever his name was.
We got Dr. Moreau, Henry Jekyll, Victor Frankenstein, of course. We have Count Dracula, Lawrence Talbot, Phantom of the Opera, Phantom of the Wax Museum, The Inheritress of Udolpho, The Residence of Bly.
While you're looking, I also did not realize this. I've got the hard copy of the print copy of Conspiracy Against the Human Race, but it's only $4.99 on Kindle, and I think everybody should read that.
Yeah.
Don't have a gun or anything, but
again, it's this brutally grim, dark philosophical treatise.
yeah,
You know.
keep the guns away while you read it.
Yeah, you do not want to take a sleeping pill, a couple of glasses of scotch, and have one cartridge in the 9mm while reading it. And the other thing about the agonizing resurrection of Victor Frankenstein is it's dedicated to Michael Shea. Mr. Ligotti is a man of high taste. And, you know, one thing I did want to say to back up a little bit, because Matt had brought up the children of Old Leech. Yep. And is it too soon? Okay. Is Laird as influential as Ligotti? No, but he hasn't been working as long yet. But I saw the children of Old Leech sort of like I saw the first Lovecraft Circle. Laird has developed this incredible, rich body of work. And, you know, Robert Bloch wants to play in H.P. Lovecraft's sandbox. And H.P. Lovecraft says, hey, kid, sure, go ahead. And Frank Belknap Long wants to play in the sandbox. So, to me, what that was, what my entry was, hey, Laird, I love you, man. You write brilliantly. You're one of my favorite writers. And, you know, just thanks for these gifts you give us. And here's my tiny little tribute.
That's a good analogy, the first Lovecraft Circle. I like that.
Yeah. Here's somebody who was really great, who is working now, who we adore and we respect, and we just wanted to say thank you in our humble fashion. You know, so is it too soon for a Laird Barron tribute?
I don't know. No. You see, the thing is, like, how many people have covered Twist and Shout, you know?
Yeah.
The musician
but
done a
how
good
many people did it crappy, and how many people did it really good? That's the whole difference.
Even once you get it crappy, say they were doing live music, it's like they really liked the tune, and they wanted to be part of it. It's like kind of a living, breathing art.
Yeah.
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 It is. You know.
Although and Laird, if you're watching, I only have one criticism. Try and work on the unity of effect. Let's get a little bit more unity of effect there, and you'll be just fine. I think you're going to make it if you, as a writer, if you do that unity of effect thing. So.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Maybe Laird's young, and we need to give him some time to learn all the rules. I mean, Laird is a brilliant writer, but maybe he's not a genius. Maybe we gotta let him, get 2 or 3 more steps before he's right a whole good and tight a genius.
Now, see, do the rules include a little kickback to the senior authors?
No.
Yeah, he'll get there. No, he's very, yeah, I understand what you're saying about that's a good analogy, the first Lovecraft circle, and people admire his work, they love it, they want to play in that universe.
Yeah, I mean, my concern writing the story was, can I do anything that properly says, hey, thanks for all these wonderful stories you gave me? I mean, let's face it. Just pick up any of Laird's collections.
Joe,
I know a couple people who say, wow, that's really great writing, but the stories don't push my button. Okay, they don't push your buttons. I understand that. That happens. But I've never heard any sensible, reasonable person who truly loves weird fiction and horror say anything negative about Laird.
No, as a matter of fact, I'm very hard to scare, and 3 or 4 years before I started Lovecraft eZine, so it's been 7 or 8 years now. I remember I bought a Laird Barron collection. I'm trying to think of which one it was back then. I think it was a Mago sequence, if I'm saying that right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that book was really disturbing and scary. And I sat it down. I sat the book down. I realized I didn't know Laird from Adam at the time. I thought, I have not read a book that scared me like that in years and years and years. And I don't even remember which story it was in there. There's several, but I had to read it in pieces.
One of the things I adore and really desperately want when I'm reading is to get creeped out.
Mm-hmm.
Not the monster jumps out, and like, whoa, holy shit, I mean, the foreboding, the dread, this feeling that I want to like take a shower with, 2 bars of lava soap and sandpaper, and Laird brings that.
Yeah.
It creeps in. That's what I love. Is that's a quality that I adore to no end. And Laird, I think, is a master of that. Yeah. And I do want to go on record saying I am absolutely thrilled to be a small part of that book. I think that's
Children of Old Leech.
Pardon me?
Children of Old
The Children of Old Leech. Yeah. I think that's an amazing table of contents.
Justin.
And of course, I want to like the next time I see Sealy J, our buddy, I'm gonna slap him because it's like, oh, look at the table of contents. It almost looks like the table of contents of one of Pulver's books.
Yeah, Justin and Ross did a great job, as I understand
the book.
Justin's idea. Yeah, let me put you on screen. Keep holding that up.
Yeah, there it is. Children of Old Leech.
Yep.
Very good book.
It must be pretty disturbing because I'm having trouble with customs to get them to release my contributors' copies.
What, really?
They're bastards here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. What about a tribute anthology to Ted Klein's work?
I would love to, but first off, I would never do a tribute anthology, and I don't think one should be done, especially if the writer's living without their permission.
Well, yeah, yeah.
It just, and you know, it'd be interesting.
We had a nice show discussing his work, Dark Gods, and especially. And
yeah, well, how can you not? I mean,
yeah,
you know, Black Man with a Horn, the ceremonies. I mean, that stuff is as good as it gets.
he sent me a nice note. He watched the show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you know, every time I've heard his name mentioned from different people, everybody says he's a great guy. You know.
A Coyne anthology might be tough because he has such a small body of work.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
There's not that much to draw on. I mean, it's not like, you know, Ramsey Campbell's got a huge amount of work. Thomas Ligotti's got a huge amount of work.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
even though he's
and Laird has quite a substantial body of work. But the other thing with Laird's work is there are so many things in there you can play on.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a lot of defining thematic elements.
See, yeah. Well, when Justin invited me, I think it took 5 seconds for me to know where I wanted to start, because you have those books in Broadsword. Those books were being carried out and put on the curb. Well, I always wanted to know what the hell those books were and where they went. You know, so there's all kinds of things in Laird. The Black Guide. How many different entries can there be to the Black Guide?
Quite a few of the authors riffed on that.
Yeah. I mean, Laird's work is so rich in ideas alone. So, you know, and welcome to the Laird Barron Hour, ladies and gentlemen. Laird Barron's among our finest living authors. No, I think a good book, and I'll be happy to go on record, and even with Pulver in it, which should be a strike against it, I think that Children of Old Leech is going to be on a lot of best of lists next year.
Yeah.
And it's got probably awards too.
You know, what would make an interesting show, getting back to Thomas Ligotti, is just dedicating a show to Conspiracy Against the Human Race and talking about that book.
Yeah, because, man.
They're celebrating, huh?
Originally, when I told Tom I wanted to quote, I said, you know, I did mean extensively, you know, and his email, I got back the equivalent of laughter. Yeah, that would be a pretty cool show.
For those who have not read Conspiracy Against the Human Race, let me read you a little bit of the synopsis. Should the human race voluntarily put an end to its existence? Do we even know what it means to be human? And what if we are nothing like we were supposed to be? You know, any book that asks if the human race should end itself voluntarily is, yeah, probably not going to be What in the...
We're celebrating the World Cup victory.
We
Oh
could
yeah,
even have
sure, yeah, absolutely.
we could even have a show if it's driven us insane.
Yeah.
It did me. I used to be nice and normal. I blame Tom Ligotti for messing me up. Well, no, I think, you know what? Ligotti messed up Cisco, and Cisco messed me up. Our Ligotti started messing me up a little bit, and then along came Cisco, and sitting next to Cisco all those times on Bob's sofa really screwed me up.
Yeah, so
that's what I'm going to testify. I'm going to say in court at my sanity hearing.
yet try as we may, our consciousness may at any time rise up against our defenses against it, whispering to us things we would rather not hear. Religion is a transparent fantasy, optimism an exercise in delusional wish fulfillment, and even the quest for pleasure an ultimately doomed enterprise. Yeah, it's a very positive.
There's one thing since to tie in both Laird and Thomas Ligotti.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the story, but it's like I think the last story in Laird's last collection. He's Thomas Ligotti,
Yeah.
which is actually a comedy if you read it.
Which one is it?
He's got a story. Laird Barron wrote a story where they're at a science fiction convention, and you're going to know everybody who's there. You're told by the first names. You know, it's got Mike. You know, Mike O'Shea was there. He's just referred to as Mike. Ellen is there, and everybody else. And it's
Joe and Langan are there.
It's Dark something, I think, is the title.
More Dark.
Yeah, More Dark.
And it's in The Beautiful Thing That Awaits Us All. It's the final story.
The Croning is one of my favorite of Laird's, by the way. I thought that was a very disturbing, very scary book.
It's brilliant. It's a brilliant novel. It is my favorite Lovecraftian novel.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It might even be mine. I'd have to go down the list, but it's definitely a candidate for that.
Yeah, see, for a while it was like Radiant Dawn, and then after reading Radiant Dawn, it was The Red Tree, and then I really liked the Fuller Memorandum, but the Croning was absolutely superb.
Well, you know what, Matt? You told me, and a lot of people did, that they really enjoyed my series from authors, editors, critics of Lovecraftian critics and authors, editors. What are their favorite Lovecraftian themed stories?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the next one.
Not their favorite, but 5 of their favorites is the way I put it. It would be interesting to do the top 3 or 5 Lovecraftian themed novels. That would be a good list. You know, ask Laird, you, Joe, Rick.
I still got to send you my story list. I got it in a file somewhere. Every time I notice it, it's like, oh, I got to send that to Mike, and then I get busy and forget. All right, let me do one thing, okay? With Grimscribe, because this is important to me. Like I said before, you know, it might have been my idea to do the book, and you know, I decided who to invite and what to accept and what not. But to me, doing an anthology is not like doing a single author collection at all. I was like the director making a movie. You know, it's the actors who brought it to life, and I would just like to publicly thank and congratulate all the contributors by name. I mean, Livia Llewellyn, Daniel Mills, Cisco, of course, Karen Warren, somebody else I adore, Joel Lane, Daryl Schweitzer, Robin Spriggs, Nicole Cushing, even though she made me read 2 of Submission, Cody Goodfellow, Michael Kelly, Edie Angerhuber, John Padgett. One thing I'd like to say about John Padgett, who's the guy behind TLO, is Tom Ligotti had said, John has this tribute story to me. Would you consider looking at it? And I said, sure, give him my email and have him send it along. It was 25,000 words.
Who is this?
Okay? John Padgett.
John Padgett? He just sent me an email.
Okay. It was 25,000 words. It would have took up a quarter of the book. I loved it to death. Loved it to death, but I couldn't use it. So I asked John, could he somehow cut it down to get it near the word count that I could fit in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately he did. He cut it down to like 5,000 words.
Well, it's really weird that you just brought him up.
The whole of this story should be somewhere. I loved it in its original form. It broke my heart to have it whittled down.
Yeah, maybe he'll let me publish it.
Yeah, that's what I'm bringing up, Mike.
Okay. He just sent me an email because a few minutes ago we were talking about True Detective. And I'm not trying to derail where you were going, Joe, but this is really interesting. Hey, Mike, just wanted to throw out the True Detective / Ligotti links. I did the research on this myself. Here are some of the quotes in question. And basically what he does is he quotes what Russ Cole says in different...
And what Ligotti says.
And where the author got it from. So I find it extremely interesting that Rick says that Ligotti was not even brought up in the on the DVD commentary.
Yeah, there were 2 commentary tracks, and he goes into the music. They go into the music of the show all over the place, but they don't go into the literary influences. Other than they mention Nietzsche.
Well, it was like the guy Nick, I forget his last name, didn't really want to admit that he got a lot of this stuff from Conspiracy Against the Human Race.
Okay. All right, let me finish something, and we will go back to.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
That. All right, because I got something I want to say about that.
Okay.
Bob Price was in the book. Michael Griffin, Richard Gavin, Scott Nickley, Simon Stranzis, Paul Tremblay, Allison Bird, Jeff Thomas, John Langan, and Gemma Files. It was an absolute pleasure to work with all of them. It was an honor and a privilege to get to be able to publish new work by them. My respect for them is just as high as it could be. Like I said, I consider it a privilege to have been able to steer the boat. But they did all the rowing. They're the actors that made the play come to life. And I just want to say publicly how proud I am of them. And to me, the award is as much them as it is me. I accept it for them. This was a team effort. Now back to what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
True Detective was portrayed as hard noir.
Mm-hmm.
It right out of the box, it stated that this is hard noir. Yes, it made all these references and homages to weird fiction. But then the creator is also not a weird fiction writer. So even though he loves the stuff and appreciates it, and he used this to flavor his stew,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a weird fiction stew. So, let's face it, science fiction, accepted. crime, accepted. Mystery, accepted. Horror, weird fiction, we are still the bastard children of literature. Perhaps, and I don't know this because I have no inside information, but perhaps the corporate side of True Detective, in all its guises, does not want to be painted by weird fiction.
I'm not even talking about the weird fiction aspect of it, though. I'm talking about the ideas in the show that came right out of Conspiracy Against the Human Race, his philosophical treatise.
Right, but perhaps we want to play to the mystery, hard-boiled noir audience, and we don't want them to be turned off by any of that horror stuff.
No, I know, but I just don't think he's acknowledging the book. I don't think he's not in the story itself, but for example, in the commentary. I mean, it's obvious that where you got these ideas from.
Oh, obvious.
You know.
Greeks.
By the way, John, if you're still watching, I love this research you did.
Well, it's just like, like if you listen to any commentary by, let's say, Quentin Tarantino, he borrows from all sorts of kung fu, spaghetti westerns, whatever. He acknowledges it all.
Oh, he makes no bones about it. Tarantino loves what he loves, and he is the first one to say, if Tarantino borrowed from Ligotti, he'd be the first one to say, man, I love Tom Ligotti. That was the greatest thing ever. Man, when he did this over here, I couldn't get enough. And, Tarantino is just wonderful like that.
Yeah, and that's my problem.
Tarantino is not hiding what he loves.
Yeah, this guy's acting like he came up with these ideas, and he didn't. And that's no reflection on the show. It's a great show. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying acknowledge Ligotti's book.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's where you got the ideas.
Right. I mean, how can you not, in the course of a commentary, talk about the King in Yellow? When you used it as the plot device that you used it as. Ligotti, at least those two things. If nothing else. I mean, when you look at that character's worldview, I mean, my God, it's Ligotti with a capital T and a capital L.
What John did here was really, really good. I hope he sends me the rest of it. He basically does a Rust quote, and then he shows where that idea came from, quotes from Conspiracy Against the Human Race.
You should have him do an article.
Is this a published article he could print it somewhere?
I don't know. I replied to his email and told him I'd love to see the rest of it, so I'm waiting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not a published article, why don't you see if you can get it for Lovecraft eZine?
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this, because this is amazing.
Yeah, and like I said, the complete version of his story from Grimm Scribes really deserves to be published somewhere. I thought it was utterly wonderful. I hated to cut it down, but there was no way I could go 20,000 words over my word cap. Nicole Cushing sent me one story that was like 8,000 words and one that was under 2,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
I loved them both. I picked the shorter one because I found it so charming. It really tugged at me. But it really hurt not to use her novella. Her longer story. I mean, I ultimately told her you should just submit it here. I think they'd love it. And I think she did. You should proceed.
I don't know. I don't think so. But
I think it was A Choir of Beasts, if I remember correctly. It came out as a chapbook somewhere. John's long version was really wonderful. So.
Here's just one example. Russ says, I think about the hubris it must take to yank a soul out of non-existence into this meat, force a life into this thresher. And here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quotes from Conspiracy Against the Human Race that basically shows how it's paraphrased right from Legati's.
Yeah, I mean, there was, as I recall, there was twice in True Detective where if you had a gun to my head, I would have swore that those were exact quotes from Legati.
Yeah, some of them are very, very close.
You know, I mean, there were others I thought.
Fine, look, dude, there's nothing wrong with that, but Jesus, acknowledge it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, at least acknowledge it. I'm glad the ideas got out there. You know, I really am. But it should be acknowledged where they came from.
Yeah, I was delighted. You know, I mean, to see somebody in that medium tipping their hat to Tom, tipping their hat to the King in Yellow, to Carl Edgar Wagner. Man, you know, I mean, you know how much I love Wagner. God.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Some of these are so close. Like you said, if you had a gun to your head, you'd swear that they were exact quotes.
Yeah, and watching them at the time, I thought that he lifted that right out of something.
Yeah, so dude, you've got all this attention on you. You've got millions of people who are gonna listen to this commentary. If it were me, I'd be like, oh, and everybody go buy Thomas Legati books because here's where I got some. There's no shame in getting ideas and philosophical thoughts from another person, another book, another place. I think it's wrong to do it and not acknowledge it, though. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but this is just, it pisses me off, quite frankly. And not much pisses me off, but that does.
Newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Davis is pissed off about something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, see, I haven't seen the DVD box set. One of the things I would think would have been a great little easy to cook up mini feature is a little 5 minutes of, hey, you know, Robert W. Chambers, King in Yellow, and Thomas Legati, blah, 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 and Laird Barron, blah, 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 and Carl Edgar Wagner, Styx, blah, blah. How long would it take to sit in front of a camera and just do some literary influences?
Hey,
you know,
Rick,
like a little 5-minute segment.
The philosophical influences, or anyone that he mentioned, you said it was only Nietzsche, nobody else?
Only Nietzsche did he mention. And just on that regard, now it's been 40 years since I've read Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, Legati didn't remind me of Nietzsche when I read it.
Right.
They seem, you know, I can't, in fact, even though I was hearing things in the commentary track, I couldn't, you know, because I was listening to the commentary rather than the dialogue. They were, you know, if you ever listen to commentary tracks, you're not really watching the show again.
Yeah.
Watching the dialogue. I didn't hear any Nietzsche in dialogue.
Okay, but isn't there a segment of the population out there in the universe who, for somebody to say, oh yeah, well, Nietzsche, of course, was an influence, blah, blah, blah. And these people don't really know Nietzsche, but what they think they know about Nietzsche is like, oh yeah, that's Nietzsche. Yeah, I see where he got that from. Because, I mean, how many people were watching this show that don't know anything about horror fiction or weird fiction? Or you know, and especially God.
Yeah.
So, but they've at least heard Nietzsche, and they think they, you know something. So, I don't know. Yeah, it would have been nice. I mean, I love to talk about my influences, and you know, I got my idea from this, from that, and whatnot. That's who I am. I want to say thank you to Robert Chambers and Carl Wagner and Laird Barron and Ligotti. That's important to me. These people gave me great gifts. So saying thank you is I'm lucky to be able to.
At the very least, I think we wanted to see some comment like, rather than use references, standard references to Satanism, I decided to use Chambers, King, and Yellow mythology, which is sort of Satan and outer space, and something like that. But
Yeah,
at least
and
appropriate.
Yeah, I agree, Rick. And again, some little 3-minute or 5-minute extra, just about some of the literary influences, would have been easy and cheap to include. And it would have also thrown this great big bone to the weird.
And you could have had Laird Barron, comment on it since they're friends.
Yeah. But again, I think they want this to play in Peoria to a crime mystery audience.
Hey, dude, I live in Peoria.
Think of that.
All right, in Middle America, you know what I meant, Matt.
I know
Iowa.
They want this to play to normal Main Street Middle America as a crime mystery show. Not that horror shit. Not that weird fiction stuff with creatures in outer space and monsters and stuff.
Well, when I see a character on a mainstream show that millions of people are watching say something like, I think human consciousness is a tragic misstep in human evolution, I'm very happy about that. I really, really am. And I'm not trying to say that I'm
you're happy.
Acknowledge where you got the idea from.
You're happy, and weirdos like Carpenter and Rick are happy, and Pulver's, he's a real weirdo, he's happy, but you know what? We are not. Mr. Carpenter probably thinks he is Mr. Main Street America, but he's got a whole lot of books in his house that prove he's not, and I'm sure in a court his wife will testify he is not. So, yeah, we're giddy, but this is where we live. This is where we play. 2 doors down from Matt is a guy with 2 cars and an insurance policy and a nice lawn, and he never heard of this shit. And if he knew that Matt Carpenter reads this stuff, he'd go buy guns.
He'd say that explains why my lawn isn't very nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, I got to quote something here.
Yeah.
This is an interview with Nick Pizzolatto by Michael Callia. It appeared on the Wall Street Journal Speakeasy. Okay? And it says they're talking about, when did you first hear and read of Ligotti? And then he says, what work of his do you find the most influential? Are you more attracted to his fiction or his non-fictional writing? Have you read his non-fiction book, Conspiracy Against the Human Race? And so the quote is, I read The Conspiracy Against the Human Race and found it incredibly powerful writing. For me as a reader, it was less impactful as philosophy than as one writer's ultimate confessional, an absolute horror story where the self is the monster. In episode 1 of True Detective, there are 2 lines in particular, and it would have been nothing to reword them, that were specifically phrased in such a way as to signal Ligotti admirers. So,
okay.
I'll link this to the eZine.
Okay,
well,
that's great.
That's really great, and I'm glad, but that's pretty subtle.
True.
What about the people that are not? Wait a second. What about the people that are not Ligotti admirers saying, now look, everybody, you love this show that I created. Here's where I got some of the ideas. Go read this book. I mean, why not say that?
Yeah.
The commentary, when you listen to it, is more geared towards selling the music.
Mm.
You get a lot of debates about whether certain
all right.
songs would have been available in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, I love T-Bone Burnett, and T-Bone Burnett, when he works on a movie, he is a quintessential part of shaping things. And I thought the soundtrack was brilliant.
Oh, it's great. The opening theme song, great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I appreciate that he mentioned stuff in the Wall Street Journal article. But I think more people are going to see the DVD box set than the Wall Street Journal. And because the weird fiction elements are major pieces in the overall story arc, I think they should have been at least addressed briefly in the box set. I mean, when you rely so heavily on Legati to build a character, which he did, and the King in Yellow as your serial killer's motivation. I mean, those are major pieces of the pie, and they
Matt asked a question about fan fiction a little while ago. I mean, this is getting real close. True Detective is getting real close to Legati fan fiction, as brilliant as it is. So acknowledge the guy,
Yeah.
So anyway.
And think of True Detective as a King in Yellow story.
Yeah. I'm amazed King in Yellow didn't come up in the commentary.
Yeah.
It's
Kind of weird. Okay, because it's a major plot device. How do you not explain it to a viewership?
Just so everybody knows, there are only 2 episodes which have commentary on it. Out of the, what was it, 8? It was 8.
Oh, I figured they'd all have it.
No, it's like the middle episodes. I think it's 5 and 6 have commentary.
Oh.
Oh, that's
okay.
okay.
Yeah. And I figured the box set would be loaded with extras. I mean, normally all these things are. They're loaded with, somebody's grandmother's chocolate cupcake recipe, for crying out loud.
Well, all the extras seem to be. I think there was 1 or 2 I didn't recognize, but I had heard all of them before on the website.
Oh, okay.
So like behind the episode and interviews with Woody Harrelson and Matthew
Which is
McConaughey.
relevant, and I understand interviews with the actors and all of that. I'm just with Mike when a certain type of literature plays such a role in this 8-hour show. How can you not address it?
Well, you guys may not know this, but Justin actually did a short email interview with the guy.
Oh, I know he did, yeah.
Here's a very good question that Justin asked. Some readers seem surprised that you did not mention Legati as a direct influence on Cole, and some were of the opinion that you were simply being coy about it. Are you a reader of Legati? How influential has his writing been on not only Cole, but on the series as a whole? And then he gives some kind of non-answer about why he didn't mention Legati as an influence. I tried to avoid discussion of Cole's philosophies because the truth is the audience cannot yet see the totality of Cole's character or the story being told. Okay, whatever. You make a good politician.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no! Wait a minute. I think that's a good point because the show hadn't completely aired by then.
He was actually on a shoot leash from HBO. He was not allowed to do a lot of interviews.
Right. Okay, but the box set comes out with all the extras on it.
Right.
So now you can start talking about that stuff because viewers now have the totality of the show to watch before they dig into the extras. And the viewers might want to know more about this aspect of this. And, if something was a heavy influence on the creation of that, I think that would be of interest to viewers.
Well, there's probably some people watching that are thinking, okay, Mike, Mike's being a little hard on this guy, but it boils down to this, okay? If you're gonna use so many ideas from Thomas Ligotti or anyone, I think you should say this is where I got these ideas from. This is where the majority of the influence for this character came from, you know? So that's all I'm trying to say. I'm certainly not trying to say it was a bad show or anything like that, because I don't think that. But I do think Ligotti should have been referenced. At least at the end, like you're saying, Joe. So,
yeah, I concur.
taking a dead horse here, but that's how I feel.
I mean, I notice on the internet there's an awful lot of talk right now about season 2 and what's going to happen. I'm curious as hell if we're going to have any kind of weird fiction elements in it this time.
I'm
doubting it.
Well, I doubt we have any of the ones we had previously.
Yeah.
Right.
I originally saw that the initial thing was going to be the occult underpinnings of the transportation industry.
Yeah.
But I think it's evolved from there as he's still writing the episodes. So it might not be anything except, who knows. I'm looking forward to it regardless. Cause as
I'm looking forward to it too. I'm one of those people who love the entirety of the show. You know, and when we do a show on True Detective, I will be probably the one sole voice that liked the ending. You know,
I like the ending.
I like the ending. You know, there's just Mike there.
No comment.
Okay. Well, when we do the show, we'll talk about it, and I'll tell you why I like the ending and whatnot. So, you know.
Well, you know, look, I don't throw out strong opinions too often, really, and
Wait a minute. Strong opinions. You're entitled.
Yeah, I'm just a bit upset that Ligotti was not mentioned. I mean, I just think it's a bunch of bullshit, but that's now I'm kicking the dead horse until he's.
Just one thing. Wouldn't you love to have a third season of True Detective where somebody's in a cave and sees a red, almost completed circle? You know, in the Northwest somewhere.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that would creep me out. I don't know if I could watch it.
That would be pretty interesting. I wonder if they'd have to pay somebody some money, though.
Or at least clear it with, layer. Get it
Yeah.
Well, okay, so.
And then maybe in that little northwestern town you could have some, John Paul Langan, runs the general store. And old man Tremblay lives down at the end of the road in that rat trap little shack.
Well, why don't we do this? Everybody watching, if you haven't watched True Detective, watch it, and we'll do a show on True Detective in a few weeks. I'll figure out a Sunday that works best for all of you guys, and we'll talk about it with spoilers.
Pick a Sunday like a month. Pick a Sunday like a month from now. Give everybody warning. Hey, we're going to do this show here, and we're going to take it apart. So
right.
It'll be nothing but spoilers. So we just want to give you.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
You don't have to, but I'd really like to do some kind of discussion of C.J. Henderson and Larry Latham coming up.
No, I'm glad you said that. We need to do that.
The next week or two. Larry Latham, he hasn't updated his website in about 2 weeks, so I always get worried.
Yeah. 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 Well, do you guys think we ought to That's what we ought to do next Sunday, actually, because C.J. Henderson just passed away. We ought to talk about him next Sunday. So,
Okay.
that sound all right with everyone?
Yeah,
Fine.
if all possible.
Mhm.
Robert Price knew him very well.
Right. Yeah. Bob Price and CJ were like friends for like 35 years. Bob married CJ and his wife. Bob baptized
That's a weird
CJ's
threesome.
daughter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Okay. Well, I'll email Bob then and ask him if he can make it next Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay.
CJ used to come to Bob's Calum's in Jersey all the time. 20 years ago when we were doing them.
Mm-hmm.
He was in
Yeah.
a bunch of Bob's anthologies, so, yeah. Among the circle that I know, Bob knew CJ best.
And if you like Lovecraftian fiction and mixed with detective themes and detective fiction, pick up C.J. Henderson's. What's the title of the first Teddy London? The Things That Are Not There, something like that.
Yeah, things that are not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's also got a lot of pulp-oriented fiction. I mean, more
He was a great lover of pulp and comic books.
more like he wrote a spider story, which is sort of a mythos story.
Anyway, it'll be worth we could talk about him in a week or so.
I will ask Bob, and we'll all work around Bob but I'll see if he's available next Sunday.
Yeah, because Bob can be much more informative than we can. I mean, I knew CJ. I was at the Calum's a lot when CJ was
You
there.
could name any topic and say that sentence. Bob could be much more informative than any of us. He's a walking encyclopedia.
No. I know a ton more than Bob will ever know on the King and Yellow.
That's funny.
Yeah, then we could also just, even if briefly, just talk about Larry Latham. I'd like to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, we will do that. I'll email Bob, and thanks for being on the show again, guys, and especially Joe. I'm glad you're getting better, and thanks for talking about.
Yep. Thank you.
Put you on the screen there. Thanks for talking about Grimscrub's puppets, and congratulations again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Drinks are on you. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. With the 99 cents you guys are gonna give me.
Right.
Joe's in the big time now, so I'm just immensely grateful that he's going to even stay on the show.
Oh, yeah, I'm a big cheese now, yeah. Oh, boy.
And also, everybody, thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
Have a good night, all.
Yep. Take care, guys. We'll talk to you all soon.
Take care, everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Talk to you guys soon.